Okay, welcome back. This is part two of a two-part video. If you haven't watched part one yet, I'll put the link in the description below. But in part one, I talked about the impact of the 20K loss, and I shared two interesting hands that I played. One hand, I ran full house into a full house, and the other interesting hand, I thought I flopped gen, top two pair, straight draw, flush draw, and end up losing as well. In this video, I'm going to share two more hands that I played last week that were interesting, as well as give my general reflections of the week as a whole. Please enjoy.
Okay. Hand three. This is also in the 5-5-10 game. This one is an interesting hand. I'm in the big blind with 8-5-7-4, one suit. And there was a raise and a few callers, and I ended up making the call for $50. So let's say there's $200 in the pot, and we're going four ways. Actually, no, I think we went five ways, and there's $300 in the pot for $60. So I'm in the big blind with 8 of hearts, 7 of hearts, 5 of spades, 4 of clubs. And the board comes, if you love PLO like I love PLO, do the right thing. Take a moment to hit the subscribe and like button for more PLO content. King 6-3 rainbow. So this is a really good flop for my hand, obviously. I flopped the full wrap here. And backdoor flush draw. So it goes check, and then the actions to me. So this is a hand where I think there's really two options. You can either check raise or you can open lead. In this particular hand, I chose to open lead because my thought process was on King 6-3, even though this is a five-way pot, there's not really a lot of very strong hands that you're going to run into. I mean, if you run into pocket kings, you're still a favorite against that hand if you get all the money in and you see all the cards. So, that's not a big deal. And a lot of times this type of board gets checked through. And my hand is a hand that can play a big pot. So I want to put some money into the pot and also try to create an opportunity where if I don't make my hand on the turn, I can make another big bet and try to get some better hands to fold. So that's kind of my thought process. Like, I've decided that with this hand, I'm betting all three streets. I'm going pot, pot, pot. And sometimes I'm going to make the straight, and other times I'm going to run into it and I'm just going to lose, but I'm emptying the clip. I prefer to empty the clip with a hand that has a pair to the board. So I would like this hand better if I had, let's call it a 6 in the hand, so I could have a pair in a wrap, and then you're kind of just blocking less hands that could call you. But anyway, we're emptying the clip at this point. We've decided we're down 15K in the week. We have this hand. We're gonna put some money in the pot. So with the board 6-5-3, the actions on me, there's 300 in the pot. I immediately go full pot. And when I bet full pot, I've kind of, it's a credible threat that once I bet full pot, unless the board drastically changes, I'm going to go pot, pot, pot. And I've kind of established that. So it's also a good signal when I get some people to fold hands, just because they don't have a hand that can handle that pressure across multiple streets. Anyway, so I bet 300 and I get called in two spots. I get called in the cutoff and the button. And I think the cutoff was the original raiser. So now we have $1,200 in the pot. I have about 2,000 behind, and I've made up my mind we're going pot, pot, pot. So the turn is a 9. And this is a good card for my hand specifically, just because I pick up a few more outs to my wrap. And I am looking to get the money in. So I bet $1,200 here. The cutoff player calls, and the player on the button tanks for a while and says, "Oh, I don't think I can fold this hand. I just have to go with it. I know you're ahead." And he just says, "Fuck it, all in." And I think the all in bet was just an extra $500 or $600 more. So he decided that, he'd rather just get all the money in now versus call and make a decision on the river, which I completely understand. I have no choice. I call off. There's one time here, and the river card is a 3. And I show up with 8 high, and the guy who called off ended up with queen high, and he wins the pot. So lucky me. This was interesting because, similar to kind of the hand I referenced in the last video, it sucks to lose, but to lose getting this type of action, is very encouraging for the future, right? Like on the flop, he called a full pot size bet with just a gutter ball. He showed queen jack 5-7. So on the flop, he called a full size bet with just a gutter ball. He turned a 9, which gave him another gutter ball. So he had 2 gutter balls and he turned clubs, which I guess that makes it a little bit better. I didn't realize at the time that he turned the flush draw, but this makes a bit more sense. Either way, though, people are out here looking to gamble. And, that's encouraging for someone like me. And I try to be very objective when I review my hands, just to show that, am I getting lucky? Am I getting unlucky? Am I beating the games? And, when I see stuff like this and I also lose, I see, well, I'm definitely beating this game. I just got unlucky, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, the final hand that I would like to share from this week, it's 5-5-10 game. And we play this pot 3-handed. I'm in the big blind. The button opened to $50, and we play the pot 3 ways. The board comes. I'm in the big blind with ace 5-5-10 with the ace high suit, and I call the $50 bet. The board comes 3-10-5 rainbow with I flop top pair, a gutter ball, and a backdoor flush draw. I think I started the hand with roughly $3,000, and the main villain has me covered. So I have some ideas for this hand. The action goes check, check, and the original raiser who was on the button, he bets $100 into the pot of approximately $150. So my hand has some pretty interesting properties here, right? Like, I have the gutter ball to the wheel, have top pair, and I have the backdoor flush draw. And, we're playing this hand 3,000 effective. I can put a lot of pressure on hands, right? Like, if you think about it, what hands are very strong on 10-3-4, right? You have pocket 10s, which I block with the 10. You have pocket 4s, pocket 3s, which, pre-flop raiser shouldn't have those hands very often. You have your over pairs, aces, which I block with an ace. You have kings, which is a hand someone could have. But, they should be considered checking that back a lot. And then you're going to have like 10 with Broadway cards. Sometimes you're going to have the 5, 6, 7, which I block with the pocket 5s. So my thought process is, if I check raise here, sometimes he just gives up, right? It's like a shitty board. He bet, and he could just give up pretty easily. If he calls, well, I can just empty the clip, right? I can bet. and it's going to be pretty challenging for him to call off. So I'm pretty excited about this situation. So he bet 100 into a pot of around 150. I 3-bet for $400. So not quite full pot, but essentially full pot. The middle player folds, and surprisingly, he calls. So I'm not really sure what this hand means when he calls here, right? Like the hands that he would call with, if he had 10-10, I think he just flats and slow plays and lets me kill myself. If he has 10 and over cards, maybe you just call and hope high cards come and then you can get a good run out. I'm not really sure, but I'm actually happy he calls. Like I would have liked to have won the pot there, but I'm also happy he calls because I feel like I'm just going to win the hand on any turn card because I'm going to bet all in. Or not all in, but I'm going to bet pot. I probably get the worst turn card. It's the 4, not bringing in my flush draw. So it pairs the board. And now, his aces or kings, that continues. He now has a pretty strong 2 pair. If he somehow had like 4, 5, 6, he now has trips. If he has somehow 10-4, he has a full house, but I don't see how he has that hand. But anyway, I think it's a pretty shitty card in general for my hand, but I think it's a good card for what I'm representing, right? So by check raising him on the flop and calling from the big blind, I'm kind of saying I either have those lower cards, a random 2 pair with 10-4, or I have top set, or I have a set. So the board pairing is usually a good card for the aggressor, because then you get to continue aggressing. But something that I've had a lot of success with is on these board pairing cards that kind of kill the action. I've been doing a small bet size, like a half pot or less. And the reason why is because a lot of times if people have a draw and the board pairs, they just instantly fold, right, without thinking. So it's a way to kind of get cheap folds and pick up value without risking a lot of money. And, the times you run into it, you can just kind of fold your hand. And the times that you're strong, maybe someone talks themselves into a call with a hand that's drawing dead. So anyway, I bet 500 into a pot of 900 after check raising the flop. And the guy shoves all in. So anyway, I instantly fold. And, my grand plans for the hand just got fucked. I don't really think there's anything to learn from this hand specifically. I just thought it was an interesting hand to kind of give some thought into my thought process, right? Where, you need to have some hands that you check raise or bluff with. You need to have some hands that you check raise or put a lot of money in that are non-nutted so that you can get action the times that I actually do have 10-10. So I wanted to show the type of hand that would make sense to do that with, right? This hand was really interesting to do it with because you block top pair, you block pocket aces, you can make the essential nuts with a deuce. And, if a 6 or a 7 comes, you can also bluff that card because you have the pocket 5. So I thought this was a really cool hand to set up a 3-street bluff. Unfortunately, I don't know what the person had. I assume he had 10-4 or 10-10. He just shoved all in on me and said, fuck it, if you have it, you have it. And I did not have it. So I lost that hand. Okay. So that's the end of everything to share this week. Again, this was a pretty rough week, losing $20,000. The majority of that coming in one session, 15,000 in one game. As I've mentioned before, it's just the cost of doing business. If you're going to play high stakes, semi-high stakes, pot limit Omaha, you're going to have some nights where you lose a lot of money. And I had one of those nights this week. One thing that's encouraging is that kind of reviewing the hands and the hands that I've shared with you all, you know, I've had a logical thought process for the hands that I played. And with my style, I'm putting a lot of money in the pot and, you know, willing to just take the variance if I think it's the right thing to do. And when you do that, you know, sometimes you lose to the queen high, sometimes you lose to the one pair, and worse straight draw. And, you know, sometimes you play shitty hands and you think you flop gen and you run into the full house. You know, it's kind of just the way PLO works, but, you know, we're going to continue on this grind. This is the end of week 2.